DeFi by Design, where we talk all things blockchain and cryptocurrency while striving to educate, empower, and enrich.
What is going on, the Rollup? Welcome back to the Rollup YouTube channel, Spotify, Twitter, wherever you're watching this. It's a pleasure to have you back in GMGM. Today we have a very special guest from the LSD liquid staking ecosystem. We are talking to Daniel from Swell. He is the proud builder behind Swell Network, which lets you optimize your yield on ETH staking. We're going to be talking about all about ETH staking, liquid staking. We're going to be talking about validators all across the ecosystem here as it pertains to Ethereum after the merge. So I'll give a quick context. Right, Ethereum was proof of work. Now it's proof of stake, and the merge made that happen. We're going to be talking about why they did that, what we've seen changed, what Daniel has seen at Swell Network as far as capital efficiencies and yields. Ultimately how he views the future of finance and the future of Ethereum. So, Daniel, thank you so much for being here. It's an absolute pleasure. The LSDFi space is taking off. LSD obviously means liquid staking derivatives. Most of our audience probably knows that. Otherwise, they just think we're degenerates. And we're going to be talking about it, man. So welcome to the channel. How you doing today?
Doing very well, sir. GM. Pleasure to be with you today, Robbie, and shout out to all the Rollup listeners.
Cheers, man. Yeah, so our audience has probably been with us. Most of our audience has probably been with us for that transition from proof of work. Ethereum had a 2.5 ETH block reward going on, a few years, and now we're proof of stake, and that means that the consensus algorithm, right? The math that means that no one is spending more ETH than they actually have is now secured by a whole bunch of people staking in this big pool of validators, and all these validators talking to each other and making sure that you have the right amount of ETH and I have the right amount of ETH and he has the right amount of ETH. So what is, like, maybe we can start as like a first principles at a first principles level with proof of stake. And we can get into some of like liquid staking and what that means. So could you kind of give us high level first principles? Why do blockchains and specifically Ethereum use proof of stake as a ordering mechanism, and why does Ethereum use proof of stake?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. It's a good place to start from the principles. So effectively, the transition from proof of work to proof of stake was always signaled early on in Ethereum's development. And we really saw that initially with the instantiation of the beacon chain back in December of 2020. So you had this simultaneous beacon chain and then Ethereum POW blockchain. And we saw the merge come through, which saw the transition from a POW to POS in September of last year. And then that was a monumental milestone for Ethereum. And we've just passed another one more recently in April of this year with the Chapella upgrade, which effectively really cemented Ethereum as a full POS network where you could also withdraw the staked assets. And this idea of POS or proof of stake really goes at the heart of blockchain technology, in the sense that it is a quote unquote consensus mechanism. Effectively, it's just a way for folks to be able to ensure the integrity of what is effectively a decentralized database, a ledger, if you will, and to that entire crypto economic system. But put more simply, I think for the majority of your listeners, people are sort of looking to get involved in staking. And so effectively what staking does, and I'm talking just general staking, not liquid staking, is you lock up your ETH, your assets, and in return, you're providing a service to the blockchain, you're validating, and in return, you get staking rewards, and those rewards are denominated in ETH, and that's the entire sort of issuance mechanism and how you are repaid for your efforts, and your validators are being put to work. And the more people that stake, the more security the system has, and hopefully they do it in a decentralized sort of manner. That's the high level.
Got it. That makes sense. And there's a few ways to think about it. Ultimately, you're providing your capital to the network as a service, and you're paid for that service. We've seen other networks do it differently. We've seen in the Bitcoin network, miners contribute their capital in the form of energy, in the form of electricity by contributing it through these miners. They are paid for that service. They mine Bitcoin. Similarly, in Ethereum, you provide your capital. It's in the form of ETH. You're paid for the service that you when you provide your capital. So that I think is relatively foundational when it comes to like blockchains and crypto economic systems. So now you highlighted staking, and I think that's been in the Web2 news in terms of like TradFi and some centralized exchanges. There's a lot of regulatory talk about is Coinbase offering a security by offering this staking product. I think we'll leave that out, for the most part of this conversation. But you did highlight, you mentioned staking in general, and that's not liquid staking. So maybe now could you highlight the difference? What makes staking liquid staking?
Sure. So the fundamentals of staking generally is that you put your capital to work, you lock up your capital, you stake it, and in return you get staking rewards. And traditionally, before the advent of liquid staking, the staker had a choice. If I was an ETH holder and I wanted to participate in staking, normally I'd have to choose between staking or participating in something like DeFi. So before the advent of liquid staking, I'd either have to get staking rewards, or I could use the ETH to mint DAI, I could provide ETH USDC liquidity or something like that, right? So it was always a trade-off. And what liquid staking did was enable you to have your cake and eat it too, so you could do both. And the mechanism by which that was made possible was through this concept of rehypothecation. In other words, what happens when you stake your ETH with a liquid staking protocol like Swell, genuine liquid staking protocols that are at the crypto economic or crypto primitive level will issue you a receipt token. Some people call it an LSD, other people call it an LST, liquid staking token, liquid staking derivative. But in effect, what it is a receipt token. It's a mirror representation of your staked ETH on the beacon chain. And what you can do with that token now is you can earn the staking rewards. So in effect, you're like earning interest or earning yield. And you can also use that to mint a stablecoin, or you can use it to provide liquidity. And that's now being accepted as collateral. And in some ways, it's becoming the most preferred and most pledged form of collateral. So it's a very powerful crypto economic primitive because you can do both now. So in effect, what's happened at a systemic level is that people are able to, Ethereum is able to get more security. And at the same time, DeFi has been able to grow. And we've seen this narrative come through, which is LSDFi. And at the same time, there's more and more ETH staked. And that's been really accelerated by liquid staking.
Got it. And now we're kind of seeing this trend unfold, right? Because the merge was 6 months ago, about roughly 6 months ago. I think it was in about February of this past year, or of 2023. So this is in August, which makes it about 6 months that we've been in this post-merge proof of stake type of system. And there's a really great website. I'll give it a quick shout out. It's called ultrasound.money, and it kind of highlights a lot of the statistics of this proof of stake world that Ethereum is in. Some of the other characteristics are that ETH is now deflationary sometimes. So it has this burning mechanism that burns some of the fees and takes ETH out of circulation when the network becomes very congested. And this is another form of kind of the controls that happen in a decentralized way for capital inflows and outflows to make sure that this system remains healthy. So kind of taking a look at like ultrasound money and the statistics and data that we have for this first 6 months of ETH in a post-merge world, what are some takeaways that you have just by, kind of loosely observing some of that data, how often ETH is deflationary? Do you have any just milestone conclusions at this point about is this going well? Is this transition problematic potentially? What are you seeing in the data from the last 6 months and the first 6 months of this proof of stake Ethereum?
Yeah, sure, Robbie. So just a couple sort of qualifiers before going into like a projection or interpretation of what the data is showing at the moment. So the burn mechanism, which is the primary mechanism to enable the deflationary effects on ETH supply or new issuance, was EIP 1559, which was much earlier than the merge. The merge happened in September of last year. So we've had a bit longer than 6 months of data to look at things. But what we have seen is that the ultrasound, it's sort of apt that you pointed out, ultrasound money, because that is effectively the mental model for what ETH is today. It really is ultrasound money, and is a good contrast to traditional fiat or unsound money in many ways. In one case, you have this hyperinflationary sort of the debasement of purchasing power in one side of the financial system, and then within the Ethereum ecosystem, you have ultrasound money. This triple point asset, global settlement layer type thing for Ethereum. And I think what the data has shown is that a lot of the risk in Ethereum's overall development and maturation as a blockchain has really been sort of worked through. It wasn't too long ago where people were sort of very skeptical and highly pessimistic about could Ethereum do the merge, could Ethereum enable withdrawals. And that's what happened. And now we're at a point now where we're starting to see more and more ETH stakes. So it's like the Lindy effect on Ethereum is just continuing, and we're seeing more and more primitives and things being built on top. I think the timing as well for this particular show is prescient because we just had PayPal, one of the largest, if not the largest fintech company, deciding to issue stable off the back of an Ethereum blockchain. And that further reinforces Ethereum as this global settlement layer, as this baseline infrastructure for the future of finance. And I think the mechanics overall are really an enabling force for that thesis to play out.
Why? I'm glad you brought that up with respect to PayPal. That's a massive move the needle type of partnership and deployment. Why do you think PayPal chose a public blockchain like Ethereum rather than building their own closed wall garden?
I think there's been like a significant development in just the use case or the value of a public blockchain over a private blockchain. A private blockchain is basically a glorified centralized database. And we've run that experiment with IBM and other sorts of things in the earlier days of blockchain development. Things that are open source, things that are censorship resistant, things that are and can be verified by anyone all day, every day, has really that's the whole point of blockchain actually, is the blockchain. And so I think that the decision for PayPal, and hopefully others follow suit as well, is really an opinion about what the future of finance looks like. And one of the strongest product market fit sort of developments over the last couple of years has been stablecoins. And that's the stablecoin is really the thing that will inject a lot of exogenous capital into the system. That's the thing that will get folks that aren't sort of crypto native to utilize crypto and this technology without even realizing it. And that's how we're going to, in the sort of vein of Web3 talk, onboard the next billion users.
Yeah, I certainly agree. We've seen, right, like swapping, and there's some like money Legos, DeFi primitives that are like only available to us because of significant movement in blockchain technology and the building that's taken place on top of blockchains. These functionalities were always there, right? Lending and borrowing, swapping, right? The method of exchange. It's always been available to us. It's just now available to us in a decentralized manner. And like people like that, crypto people like that, DeFi people like that, but it doesn't quite move the needle for a normie, if you will, because they've always been able to do something like that. The fact that it's decentralized now is just kind of like, oh, that's nice, but I don't really, it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. The idea that now there are stable coins that are providing easy methods of transfer, instant settlement. I can actually get paid quicker. These are, and I can then take that money and then send it to someone on the other side of the world in the form of a remittance. These are all moving the needle for like the billions of people that are out there. And PayPal has the brand trust and the loyalty with those end consumers so that they don't really have to change their behavior, right? Like they're just going to continue using PayPal, right? But now under the hood, PayPal is going to settle on this public blockchain, which is, it's not just a blockchain. And I think that's really important, especially for our audience to understand, is that it's so great, right? I love that these billions of people are onboarded to blockchain, but that's not enough. It's important that they are onboarded to a public blockchain. And the idea that the fact that now PayPal is using Ethereum is a great example of why. Public blockchains, as you alluded to, have inherent value in them that private blockchains don't have. The IBMs and the experiments that were ran for supply chain, right? Those are walled gardens, and they don't interoperate with other blockchains that exist. If PayPal was to create its own private blockchain, they would recreate a flawed system, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, like that is our current banking system, and our current financial stack are these siloed financial institutions that don't have the means of cooperating with one another unless it's through archaic types of written contracts and very, very slow bureaucratic systems. We are able to replicate the best forms and best first principles of that system. The idea that like we can trust like these systems with our money. People like that. But now we're able to recreate that custodial system in a way that is able to cooperate, and it's able to cooperate through code that no one is trusting. People are able to verify it on their own, that these like decentralized institutions are able to cooperate with each other. So I think it's a really important distinction between PayPal and other financial institutions using public blockchains versus them using their private blockchains.
Oh yeah, completely agree. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I just want to drive that home, because I don't know there's certainly a question there. Like I think there's going to be financial institutions that we've already seen, right? JP Morgan, Chase, they kind of experimented a little bit with this private blockchain type of structure. And I haven't heard a lot about it in the last few months. It might still be alive, or maybe they're coming around as they do their research. Ethereum is continuing to scale in terms of throughput and liquidity. And that just makes it a higher bar for private blockchains to try to supersede if they want some superior technology than the public blockchain that is already available and already growing. So how do you see this playing out? Like with respect to, and obviously there's a couple different institutions, like we wrap up TradFi in this big bucket, but ultimately there's like the traditional banks, and then there's the neo banks like PayPal, and then there's like some other like more traditional like banking infrastructure. How do you see the adoption of liquid staking going with respect to some of these institutions, and then ultimately the end consumers that already trust these financial institutions with their money?
Yeah, I think we're still at the very early stages of like staking generally. There's still a minority of ETH stake relative to the potential and what the comparators are showing on full PLS systems. We're like 20% of all ETH stake, and we'll see that number climb up, and then we should see ETH in relation to sort of USD values as well sort of shift more favorably to the upside, and we'll also see more primitives as well come through. So at the moment, post Chapella, a lot of the risk return has been transformed to the upside, because what happened was a lot of the risk was taken out of the system whilst returns have remained largely the same. So if anything, you're better off after Chapella. And we saw this in the data with a lot of inflows coming through on staking. But at the same time, like a lot of the sort of the adoption has come through the crypto native side, people that are very comfortable already holding ETH. We're still yet to see the onboarding of quote unquote TradFi. But I think that these sorts of developments are very promising, and I think that there would be in some ways a confluence of both tokenization of stable coins or representation of stable coins using a mix of sort of off-chain assets and also on-chain assets. And there'll be a case for both and hybrid models and that sort of thing. And we're starting to see this as well in sort of real world asset of RWA growth as well. But in terms of where to from here, I think the institutions will come as more financial products come out as well. So we're starting to see more of these ETFs come through BTC, then ETH, then ETH LSTs will come as well after that, and just more and more primitives built out. So there's been an analogy made about us speed running the financial rails, but just doing it on chain. And if you were to say, well, where are we on that journey? We're still very early, but yeah, I'm optimistic.
Lovely. Yeah, we are so early when we think about like the adoption trajectory, and like TradFi is still focused on ETFs. Meanwhile, we're on like DeFi 4.0. Like they still have to go through that entire arc. So yeah, we are quite early, and it is really cool to see it play out and to be on the forefront of it. I think a lot of crypto and DeFi builders are forward thinking and love to be on the cutting edge of technology as well as finance and math in general. Anything with game theory and that is what secures a lot of these crypto economic systems. And it is really cool to speed run. Just speaking anecdotally now, like I think it's a really cool space to be in. So any traditional financial bankers that are listening, actually our last podcast was with WorldPay, who settles like trillions of dollars, but they're TradFi, So we may have some TradFi listeners that poke their head into this podcast, and I encourage them to go down the rabbit hole. Keep listening, keep learning, keep building, and find your edge in DeFi, because there's lots of room to explore and freedom to innovate, which is unique to this industry. So yeah, no, please.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say yes. Welcome all the TradFi people. Please come this way because
Yeah.
we need more. We need more of that, and more of those different perspectives to come through. So it's only a positive. Yeah.
Certainly, yeah. Like we're there's no remorse or resentment or anything. We will welcome you with open arms. Yes. So switching gears a little bit, let's talk. I think you've painted a very vibrant picture of liquid staking and proof of stake and Ethereum in general. So let's dive a little bit deeper into Swell in particular. You guys have a liquid staking protocol where any ETH holder can deposit their ETH, and then they receive staking rewards, right? So walk us through a little bit about what happens in the middle from when I click the button to deposit some ETH, and I can get some Swell ETH. Like what happens in the middle? What is the mechanism?
Yeah, so Swell is a non-custodial liquid staking protocol. At a high level, what we do is we utilize our smart contracts to enable you to click a couple buttons and all of a sudden you're participating in Ethereum staking, and it's all liquid. So traditionally you'd have to have 32 ETH and you'd have to set up your validator node and do all that, and then but with Swell, that's all sort of abstracted away from you. It's all very simple, and the way it works is that we have a set of professional and vetted operators that have a lot of institutional experience. In aggregate, they run billions of dollars worth of ETH and have excellent uptime performance, and so there's surety from that perspective. And then with regards to Swell, security for us is the highest priority. We have an immunified bug bounty out. We're also audited by Sigma Prime, who also was involved with the EF and has audited as well numerous other liquid staking protocols. So highly experienced from that perspective. So in essence, what you do is you just jump to the dApp, you click stake, and you're off and away, really. It's as simple as that. And then you can choose to participate within the DeFi ecosystem. We have a ton of integrations and across the Swell ecosystem. You can LP, you can mint stables, you can deposit those LP tokens into different emissions layers, and goes like choose your own adventure sort of thing. And then in terms of like Swell itself, we've been live on mainnet for about 3 months. We have just under 45,000 ETH staked, so a touch over 80 mil in TVL, and we're currently running this campaign called the Voyage, where folks can come in and be rewarded for early adoption and participation in our upcoming airdrop campaign. And that's seen a lot of good traction and product market fit. We have more than 10,000 people joining us on that journey, which is really nice to see. And we're really excited about what we're building, and I think we're really just at the early chapters of what Swell's going to do in DeFi, and we hope to just continue to keep shipping and deliver for our community.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, the LSDFi space. I made a mistake. I said February. It's been September, so almost a year now. And there's lots of instances of like how people see this LSDFi space, and like there's a lot of different perspectives. And we are starting to see some of the tools connect with one another. And Swell has the pieces, whereas like we've seen, one of them, right? Like there's multiple protocols without mentioning any in particular. Some of them allow you to deposit and that's it. Some of them allow you to take what you deposited and then mint stablecoins off of that. With Swell, it sounds like it's all kind of together. And you guys have a pretty like comprehensive ecosystem of like these money Legos that we like to call them. And you guys have been able to like package them together and build a structure yourself rather than supplying like one Lego. You guys have built this like hyper structure of Legos. Is that a fair assessment of Swell?
Yeah, that's right, Robbie. I mean, that's what we try to prioritize. Like we ourselves are, like we see ourselves as being really the composable base layer to enable a lot of primitives on top. You're seeing this in the DeFi Llama data, where liquid staking is now the #1 category in all of DeFi, but it also actually supports all the other categories as well. So things like DEXs, they use LST. Things like stables are going to use LST if they don't already. Things like borrow lend protocols, it's one of the best forms of collateral out there. And so Swell has really tapped into this and has worked with a lot of other protocols to help build out a real collaborative and composable approach in the truest nature of DeFi, which is this composability, i.e. money Legos. And we try to keep it fun and educate folks about, okay, here are the risks, but also here's what you can do, by the way, if you want to. And it's up to you. Some people just come through, they just hold the Swell token or the Sweet token, and they earn staking rewards. Some people LP, and then they do all kinds of fun and interesting things. So it's choose your own adventure.
Yeah, and it is ultrasound money. That's part of what makes it like the best form of collateral out there. It's interest bearing, right? It's also ETH, and there's lots of benefits to holding ETH, whether you like it for the interoperability or the speculation. We're not gonna shame anyone for why they hold it. So yes, tell us a little bit more about this Voyage, right? Like you guys have is this a liquidity mining campaign? Is this like what? Like you guys have a token coming up, and part of this Voyage is like a journey towards this like token based protocol and this governance. I imagine it's a governance process. So kind of take us through like the Swell roadmap, how the token fits in, and then how this initial Voyage phase fits in.
Yeah, that's right. So what the Voyage is really a path to progressive decentralization and also growth for the protocol, because we always set out to develop a genuine community-owned, directed, and governed DAO, like a true decentralized autonomous organization. But it's very hard to do that like at day one. Very difficult, almost impossible. So there is this process that we've gone through, and we try to make it fun and gamified and really community-centric. And so we have the Voyage. And what the Voyage is a series of chapters telling a story about how the community members will go through these evolutions with the protocol and eventually end up in effectively Swell City, which is like a DAO. I mean, in some ways, a DAO can be akin to like a city of sorts, when particularly things like governance and so on. And so we're about to announce Chapter 2 very soon. Chapter 1's been very successful, and people are really excited about Chapter 2. And there's going to be some new and interesting bits and pieces of functionality that's going to come through the protocol. But overall, it was always about bootstrapping the protocol with people that would be long-term incentive aligned with seeing Swell generally flourish as a mainstay of DeFi, as a fully fledged DAO.
Beautiful. And what are some of those new and interesting things, like for our listeners who are in the audience, like how can they capitalize on this opportunity of the voyage?
Yeah, so more than 10,000 sort of folks have joined the voyage to date, and they've been able to capitalize on the voyage really just by being an early adopter. So what does that mean? It means like it means just like staking ETH. That's fundamentally like the crux of it, and then utilizing your sweep in different places in DeFi, and you are effectively rewarded for that behavior. So we have a bit of a points-based campaign at the moment where people earn pearls, and those pearls are then going to be redeemable for Swell token at our TGE. And then for people to like, I encourage people to like obviously NFA and do your own research and so on. But if Swell seems interesting to you, like definitely jump in, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Feel free to follow us on Twitter and jump in the Discord. And the things that are like exciting and coming up, well, there's a bunch of them. But one that I'm really excited about is our upcoming referral campaign, where people will be able to be incentivized and rewarded for helping to grow the protocol and becoming real advocates for it. And we're starting to see that behavior come through the protocol, which is really encouraging to see.
Yeah. Part of it, especially within the LSDFi space, like where you choose and which LST you choose to deposit your ETH into, with more and more options, this is something that I wanted to get into, and I think it's a relatively smooth segue. Like that'll eventually kind of like spread the ETH somewhat thin over all the protocols as more and more options prop up, unless there's something that kind of like brings them all together, like this referral campaign, where why am I going to go get 4% over there if I can get 7% here because I get 4 plus another 3 for the referral, or there's some extra incentive that encourages me to take that form of behavior and deposit it into Swell, not some other LSD protocol. And I want to kind of take this into an angle of like, once that ETH goes into so many protocols, right? Like let's say native ETH, mainnet ETH is put into Swell, and then you take your sweep, you take it, and because it's interoperable, you take it into another protocol and you mint some stable coins off of it. And then the collateral in that protocol goes to somewhere else. And then we're using shared security to underpin rollups as like a secondary form of proof of stake. At a certain point, is this rehypothecation, and is that necessarily good or bad? Like, I think there's this idea from fractional reserve banking that our money isn't really there, right? And because we spin it up so many times, like we move it around so much that no one really knows where it is. And if we wanted to pull it out, it wouldn't be there. If we take ETH and we stake it, and then we collateralize it, and then we secure it with, we use it to secure something else, and we use it as collateral so many times, is that stretching its security properties thinner and thinner? Or is there like a base, like fundamental value there that this doesn't really detract from the underlying ETH value?
That's a very, very good question. I think it's inevitable that financial systems, including crypto financial systems, tend toward more complexity the more Lindy they have. And that complexity results in hyper-financialization in some ways. And that ETH has proven, and I think will continue to be, the most pristine form of collateral that is a true embodiment of crypto. And so if that holds true, then it's really important that we have an appreciation of the various risks and layered risks that emerge out of this particular phenomena. Things like the inheritance of security properties and extending the consensus threshold, which is something that's been debated about and raised by very prominent Ethereans, in particular to things like restaking infrastructure, is important. And there has to be that social layer discussion and continuous dialogue and ongoing feedback loops between these forces where there is a hunt for yield. And the more yield there is, arguably, the more risk one will take on. But the important thing is that there is optionality for folks, because staked ETH, comparatively speaking, is perhaps one of the most conservative, if not the most conservative form of yield generation. It's been termed the risk-free rate, whether or not that's an apt term. That's, it's been likened to the internet bond. And so I would say that it is it's one of these double-edged swords things. I think it's inevitable, and I think it's probably going to be a net positive for more growth, more adoption, particularly as we see Ethereum staking yields compress as more and more ETH is staked. But at the same time, it's very important that there is appropriate appreciation and mitigations in place. And if there is things like liquidations or these sorts of things, that it's not a situation like what we had in the GFC, for example, that the risks and the liquidations are isolated to those particular positions, as opposed to causing a massive sort of systemic DeFi-wide implosion.
Yeah, and we've certainly had our taste of that, especially recently. For anyone who's following like Curve and just the whole debacle of the Curve's founder position on Aave, like it was just this intertwined mess of collateral and like liquidation risk and over-the-counter deals. It was quite a whirlwind the last couple of weeks. Any thoughts on how we can kind of unwind is not the right word, but maybe like untangle some of these like I guess that's a consequence of interoperability, right? Is things get intermingled, and there's more efficiency maybe in intermingling them, but there's also more risk. Like what in general, what's your take on the last 2 weeks of this DeFi drama?
Yeah, I think these guys are legends of DeFi, and I'd be remiss to throw criticism, or I'm probably not well placed to comment, other than I'm very appreciative for all the people that kind of came in and stepped up. And sometimes, extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. And if things weren't handled appropriately, I mean, it could have set back DeFi, a bit more. But it sees like we're through most of that. No, it's great to see people step up. And things like the sort of things that we were talking about would not be possible without Curve innovation. And what the llamas have done. We're indebted in many ways.
Yeah, and for anyone who hasn't been keeping track of crypto Twitter over the last couple of weeks, there was a massive there's a massive position on Aave, and it's Curve's founder, which Curve is one of the most like used protocols in DeFi. They have this unique swapping mechanism where they use a lot of like very sophisticated math to basically make swapping between stable coins very easy and very liquid. So Curve's founder has a lot of Curve, and that should go without any surprise. So the Curve founder took this Curve, and like any other DeFi degen, he was using Aave, as it's intended to be used. So he takes his collateral, his assets, he puts them on Aave, he borrows against his assets so that he can go buy a multi-million-dollar mansion. That's not too out of the ordinary. It was reasonably sized. I think everyone, right, enjoyed a mansion for the culture. So he takes out this loan. His curve is in Aave as collateral. He buys his mansion with the debt that he borrows from Aave, and then Curve kind of gets in trouble because there was an exploit in Curve. There was some Viper software that had a bug in it because of some release. So hackers steal the funds, and then Curve has to suffer. So Curve starts to depreciate, which means the Curve founders' collateral on Aave starts to dwindle. And if there weren't like these legends of DeFi, as Daniel said, like if these guys didn't step up, the likes of Justin Sun and Wintermute and random addresses that were conducting OTC deals, then there would have been like a massive amount of Curve just sold on the open market. It would have tanked the price of Curve. It also would have tanked like this really mature DeFi mechanism about that kind of makes Curve, the protocol, work, because the Curve token is very important to the Curve protocol because they use this bribery mechanism to allocate incentives for the protocol to work. And if Curve's token would have tanked, then the Curve protocol would have broke, because these Curve bribes would have been rather worthless. Did I get that right, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. I mean yeah. So yeah, I think that it is fun to watch. I mean, like just sort of like just watching it all sort of unfold, and it's so interesting to see the different takes on CT, and I'm like, I mean, yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we haven't gotten like a movie or at least a documentary about this. Yeah, so thankfully, these legends, these Justin Suns, Wintermutes, other prominent DeFi figures step in. They buy the Curve over the counter so that it's not sold on the open market and does not destroy the price. Long story short. And now we're through the most of it, right? So I think the Curve's founder's loan is relatively healthy on Aave. His name is Michael, so I think Michael's loan is relatively healthy on Aave, which is good. We shouldn't see massive liquidations across the industry, which is also good. So I think it's telling, right? Because we kind of landed on that subject by coming from the idea of rehypothecation. So is that evidence? Like, is that like, okay, this is what we need to watch out for. This is what can happen if we're not careful. And how do we make sure that like PayPal, who is now going to settle transactions on a public blockchain, does not have contagion risk of like incorporating their stable coins into the same mix as like some of these like other loans and other protocol deposits?
I think there is there's a Darwinian element to this, and there's a evolutionary element overall. Like there's been some commentary about the degree to which governance tokens can be used as collateral, or the underwriting requirements, or isolated risks or isolated pools versus non-isolated pools and that sort of thing. I think, it would have been an uglier situation had there not been intervention by folks. And I think this is a bit of a learning lesson for underwriters generally, and the way that these protocols sort of work. But I mean, capitalism will do its thing. And I think that hopefully, and actually, this was the birth of Bitcoin, actually, it came out of the GFC. So, I think human nature is human nature, but I think, I'd rather be on chain than off chain for things like risk and transparency and underwriting and collateral health ratios and all that sort of thing. On chain is definitely best because it's transparent.
That is a great point to make, and I want to kind of interpret like that and saying that if all of this, if Michael's position was not on Aave and it was on some like TradFi type of institution, we might not have known how unhealthy that loan really was. But and then as a result, we would have been reactionary as kind of like financial participants in this market. we would have been reactionary to think like, oh, all of a sudden, like it's insolvent, right? It's too late to save and make these over-the-counter deals. If it's in this like TradFi ecosystem, we may never have known, and we may never have had an opportunity to come in and right the ship. But because Michael's loan was on a blockchain and on a public blockchain at that, we have all these independent watchers and monitors that are able to almost consistently audit and constantly audit the blockchain for unhealthy positions. And even Aave has this network of liquidators that are always trying to snipe unhealthy positions. And because there's so many independent actors with eyes on this system, we were able to catch that before it got really, really messy. So I think that's a great thing to bring up. It's really important that this happened on a blockchain. Otherwise, it could have been much, much worse. And there's untold financial catastrophe that happens off of blockchains. Who knows how much of that could have been saved by putting those financial transactions on chain and having all these independent eyes keep watch over it at all times. We could have saved ourselves lots of strife and economic like unhappiness by having it on chain. So yeah, I want to really drive that home because I think it's an important thing to bring up, and that's not a perspective that I've heard in this recent debacle. Is people making a case for this is actually why we should have it on chain. Yeah, I really enjoy that perspective.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and well said. Yeah, completely agree.
Cool, man. Well, we are running on time here. I have one question that kind of goes with this train of thought, and then I have one question that we ask everyone who comes on the channel. So in these last few minutes, I'd love to ask just these two more questions. So we talked about Swell's voyage and roadmap and the journey that you have towards progressive decentralization. So I want to think about how that mental model plays into the Ethereum rollup centric roadmap. We also talked a little bit about shared security and stretching ETH so that it can secure other protocols and rollup protocols in addition to mainnet Ethereum. So how do you see this Ethereum's rollup centric roadmap working? How does the liquid staking kind of economy fit into that rollup centric roadmap?
Yeah, I think the mental model is that Ethereum L1 mainnet will serve as a settlement layer, and then there'll be this proliferation of L2s, L3s on top, and there'll be more efficiency, more speed, more throughput, lower gas fees, all that sort of thing, and that the foundation for that has already been laid through the EIP 1559, the merge, Chapella. All that was intentionally done so that we could have this continuation of this sort of architecture being built out. And I think the role of liquid staking will be to support staking at its core, which is to increase the economic security and decentralization of L1. And then we'll have more sort of innovation built around that with restaking and other sorts of bits and pieces of infrastructure that will be a beneficiary for the underlying economic security that comes from staking. And I think that there will be a preference or some preference for liquid staking because you can get staking rewards and also DeFi rewards and also other forms of rewards that will come through as more and more innovation and financialization takes place. So yeah, I think we're still at the early stages of that.
Awesome. Yes, still so early in terms of the building, the innovation, the adoption. There's such a long way to go. We're just not even a year into the proof of stake world of Ethereum. So yeah, the rollup centric roadmap will continue. Cool. And the last question we ask everyone, and the question is, if you could talk to anyone, dead or alive, like you were stuck in an elevator and you were to pitch someone on Swell, the liquid staking ecosystem, and maybe Ethereum in general, who would you choose to be stuck in an elevator with, and what would you say?
Oh, that's a good one. Satoshi. Just to just to
Can
get
you believe you're the first person to say that?
Oh, really?
That is honestly, I mean, that's a great answer. Yeah. So why Satoshi?
Yeah, at first I wouldn't be pitching Swell. I'd probably just be just like I want to know his or her or their perspective on like what was the original vision for what they were trying to articulate, and then how do they feel about the industry today and what's happened, and what would they do differently, and are they happy with it? And then see how the conversation goes from there, and hopefully continue with a coffee or something. I mean, I love to get in the sort of and understand that sort of line of thinking.
Such a Chad answer to that question. To say you want to talk to Craig Wright, I mean, man, no, I'm kidding. Cool, man. Yeah, we can wrap up there. If there's anything else you wanna add, go follow Swell. Shout out the Discord. Shout out Swell Network. The website is swellnetwork.io. You can stake right on the website. There's a big blue stake button. Click it.
Oh yeah.
Your ETH. And then you can find all the Twitter, all the socials on there. Follow Daniel as well. What's your personal?
Daniel_Swell_. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Go follow, keep in touch, and join the journey and join the voyage. Yeah, we'll be on it.
Thank you, Robbie. Cheers.
Cheers.